The moment I saw my son's blood on the hospital sheets, something inside me died, and something colder was born. Not grief, not fear, not even rage. Something worse. A quiet decision, sealed in the hum of the fluorescent lights and the stink of antiseptic. If he survived this, and I prayed to every god I didn't believe in that he would, then I was going to make sure no one, not my mother, not the system, not a single soul, would ever have power over us again. And if they did, they'd learn what it means when a mother stops being soft. You never expect that call. Not when you're scarfing down day-old lasagna standing over the kitchen sink, your scrubs still damp with antiseptic and the weight of 12 hours on your feet. Not when you're thinking about bills or how many more shifts you can take before you fall apart. But I got it. The ER's number lit up my phone, and I knew it before I picked up. Before the words were said. Before the nurse's voice cracked just a little too much. Lauren Pierce? Your son, Ethan. There's been an accident at school. He's being brought in with head trauma, multiple injuries. He's unconscious. I don't even remember driving there. I think my brain just shut off, and something deeper took over. The feral part of you that doesn't ask questions, just moves. I parked sideways in the ambulance zone. I didn't even lock the car. I just ran. Through the blur of blue scrubs, flickering monitors, and antiseptic haze, I caught a glimpse of his shoes on the gurney first. Blue and white sneakers, the ones he begged me for last Christmas. Untied like always. His sock was halfway down his ankle. Why did that break me? His face was pale. Blood had dried above his ear. A paramedic shouted stats I couldn't process. I think someone tried to stop me from going past the double doors, but my badge was still clipped to my pocket. I'm a nurse, I said. Or maybe I screamed it. Ethan's body was still. Too still. One arm had an unnatural bend. Tubes. IV lines. I couldn't look at his chest. I couldn't look at the monitor. I couldn't breathe. I was standing in a nightmare, and I couldn't wake up. They let me into the trauma bay once he was stabilized. Stabilized. That's the word they use when they're buying time for the worst. I stood there shaking, trying to steady my breathing while the reality of it crashed into me. I was alone. I had no one. So I did what I never do. I called her. The phone rang 3 times. Then she answered. Same clipped voice. Same polished tone she used my whole life, like she was born with a stick up her spine. Mary Pierce, she said. Mom, I choked. It's Ethan. He's in the hospital. Head injury. They don't know how bad yet. I need help. Please. I don't know how long I'll be here. Can you watch the house? Feed the dog? Anything. Her voice didn't even shift. It was like she'd been waiting years to deliver the line. I warned you. You raised him soft. Now look where that got you. That's what she said. Not what hospital? Not is he okay? She hung up. Or maybe I dropped the phone. It hit the linoleum and skidded under the gurney. The beeping of machines kept going. The fluorescent lights buzzed above me like a swarm. Somewhere, a baby was crying. Somewhere, someone was dying. And my mother, my own mother, decided that this was the moment to say I told you so. You always chose pain, she used to say, back when I was 13 and locked myself in the bathroom after another failed science quiz. You could be strong like me, but no, you want to feel everything. She said it with disgust. Like empathy was a disease I hadn't cured yet. Back then, I thought she was just harsh. Now I know better. She wasn't strong. She was hollow. I couldn't cry. I didn't have the luxury. I just stared at Ethan's face, pale, bloodied, still, and felt this coldness settle into me, like a sheet of ice pulling tight around my bones. I could still hear her voice in my head. You always chose pain, Lauren. I chose power. That's why I win. And right there, under the cruel hum of hospital lights, I said nothing. I just sat beside my son's body, fingers cold, heart frozen, and whispered only to myself, "Then I'll choose power now, Mom. You're kind. And I promise you this, you'll regret ever teaching me how." Ethan's fingers twitched on the third night. I'd been holding his hand so long I thought maybe I'd imagined it. A phantom movement. Like the way you feel your phone vibrate even when it hasn't. But then it happened again. His fingers curled around mine, weak and barely there. My heart stuttered. I leaned in close. "Ethan, can you hear me, baby?" Nothing. Just the steady beep of the monitors and the hiss of oxygen. But I saw it. The faintest flutter under his eyelids. A muscle in his jaw tightening, then relaxing. The doctor later called it promising. I called it hope. And it hit me like a sucker punch. Because up until that moment, I'd been running on something else entirely. Not faith, not fear. Something harder, angrier, survival. I hadn't left the ICU. I slept sitting up, ate from vending machines, brushed my teeth in the family bathroom. I stopped answering texts, stopped checking work emails. The world outside didn't exist. Not the bills, not the empty fridge, not the people I used to count on. It was just me and Ethan. And every hour that passed, I heard her in my head again. "You always chose pain." She used to say it like it was a diagnosis, like my life was some mistake she'd been forced to witness. When I was little and brought home crayon drawings she deemed too emotional. When I cried the first time a friend moved away. When I told her I wanted to be a nurse, she laughed. "You want to wipe old people's asses for a living? Figures. You always choose pain." No encouragement, no warmth, just mockery. Even now I could almost feel her hovering, smirking in that cold, razor-thin way of hers. But things were different now. Ethan had survived the worst. The bleeding in his brain had stopped. His vitals were stable. He was in a coma, yes, but they said it was a protective one. He could come out of it in days, weeks. No one knew. What I did know? No one like her was getting anywhere near him again. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through the contacts until I found her name, Mary Pierce. I didn't delete it. Not yet. But I did something better. I opened the hospital's electronic access form and changed everything. Next of kin, Lauren Pierce. Mother emergency contact. No alternates. Visitor authorization. Lauren only. Until further notice. I watched the cursor blink next to restricted contacts, then typed it slowly, with surgical precision. Mary Pierce. No access. Block from unit. I hit save. Then I opened the online banking app. Ethan and I shared a checking account, just to make it easier for me to manage school fees and groceries. She'd once insisted on being added when he was born, just in case something happened to you. I removed her. Immediately. Then I changed the passcode, the security questions, even the backup email. Every trace of her wiped. By the time the sun rose, I'd rewritten our world. I didn't cry while I did it. That part of me felt like it had been burned out. All that was left was something sharper, like a blade cooled in fire. I still sat by his bed every hour, still sang his favorite lullaby under my breath, even though he couldn't hear it. I brushed his hair back with fingers that no longer shook. He twitched again that afternoon. One eye blinked open, just once. But it was enough. The nurse gasped. The monitors ticked upward. They called the doctor. I just sat there and whispered, "It's okay, baby. You're safe. She'll never touch you again." It was a promise I made in that room and carved deep into my chest. Because I'd finally stopped being soft. I thought about the time my mother stood over me at 14, holding the shredded pages of my journal. "You're pathetic," she'd hissed, crying over nothing, choosing pain again. "No, Mom, I wasn't choosing pain. I was choosing truth. I was choosing to feel. You chose to win, to dominate, to dismiss. That's not strength. That's cowardice in a business suit." Ethan's hand curled tighter around mine. That night, I stepped outside the hospital for the first time in days. I stood under the streetlight, cold air prickling my arms, and I finally let one tear fall. Just one. Not from sadness, from release. Because now I had a plan. The morning Ethan opened his eyes, the world didn't explode with trumpets or confetti. It was quiet, simple. I was half asleep, head tilted against the side of his hospital bed, the warm hum of the monitors like background static. The nurse had just come in to adjust the IV drip when I heard it. A whisper, hoarse and dry. "Mom?" I thought I was dreaming. Then I looked up, and he was watching me. Both eyes, bloodshot but clear, staring right at mine. "Ethan," I breathed. My voice cracked, splintering like glass in the cold. "Oh my God, baby." But before I could lean in, he flinched. Just a little, barely a movement, but enough. He was scared. I froze, hands midair, and blinked back the surge of emotion that nearly leveled me. Instead of hugging him, I took a slow breath and said softly, "You're in the hospital, but you're safe. I promise." The nurse was already pressing the call button, paging neurology, but all I could see was my boy's face, trying to make sense of pain and tubes and machines and days lost to the dark. I kept talking, my voice low and steady like a metronome. "You fell at school. Bad fall. But you're here now. And I'm here. We're okay." He blinked. A tear slid down his temple. And I knew. Some part of him remembered. Not just the fall, not just the fear, but the way it felt to be alone in it. That was the moment I swore again. Not to the universe, not to God, not to anyone who could be bargained with. I swore to him. He would never be alone again. The doctors were cautiously optimistic. He'd likely make a full recovery, but it would take time. His speech was slow. His balance would be off for a while. He'd need physical therapy, occupational therapy, a team of specialists. Insurance was going to fight me on every part of it, but none of that mattered. He was awake. He was alive. I cried later, not in front of him. I waited until he was asleep again, his breath soft and even. I went to the hospital stairwell, the one no one uses past midnight, and let myself break just enough to feel the release, the way you pop your ears after a flight. It wasn't weakness. It was survival. That night, I logged into our bank account from the hospital Wi-Fi and transferred every cent out of the shared account my mother still technically had rights to. It wasn't a lot. Nursing doesn't exactly make you rich. But it was ours. I opened a new account under my name only and linked it to Ethan's hospital bills, tuition fund, and emergency card. Then I called the lawyer. The house I live in? She helped me buy it after my divorce. But helped was always her word. The down payment was a loan, she said. A gift, she said. And yet her name still sat like a curse on the deed. I wasn't just going to cut her out emotionally anymore. I was going to sever every last tie. "I want her off the title," I told the lawyer. "I'll buy her out. I don't care what it takes." We filed the paperwork quietly. It would take time, but I had already started untangling the mess she left in her wake. Slowly, methodically. She'd once told me I was too emotional to survive on my own. But survival? It turns out I'm built for it. In the days that followed, Ethan got stronger. He said full sentences. He drank water without help. He asked for his switch, and when I brought it in, he smiled. A real smile. That was the first time in weeks I allowed myself to hope for something bigger than just okay. But I didn't relax. Because surviving isn't just about healing. It's about remembering who tried to hurt you when you were down, and protecting what's yours before they come back for more. On the fifth night, I filed a formal hospital contact restriction, in writing. Not just for my mother, but for anyone not approved by me. She'd tried to call once, the day after Ethan woke up. I didn't answer. Then again. Then she left a voicemail. "I have a right to see my grandson," she snapped. "You're making this worse for everyone. He needs strength around him, not your tears." I played it once. Then again. Then I saved it. Evidence. It made me think of all the ways she'd used that same line my whole life. You need strength, not softness. But what she never understood is that it takes tremendous strength to stay soft in a world that punishes you for it. That softness raised Ethan. That softness kept him alive. And now, that strength would protect him. I didn't call her back. I didn't explain. I just added her number to the blocked list and turned off my phone. That night, I sat next to Ethan while he slept and whispered something into the dim room. We survived, baby. You and me. And we had. But something told me this wasn't the end of the fight. This was just the part where you stopped bleeding long enough to pick up the knife. It happened on a Tuesday morning. Overcast. The kind of sky that makes you feel like the day is already dragging its feet before it even begins. Ethan was sitting up for the first time, propped by pillows, a tray of Jell-O and overcooked oatmeal in front of him. He pushed the food around with a spoon, clearly unimpressed. I was folding his clean clothes in the corner, tiny victories that now felt like miracles. And then I heard it. A voice. Soft. Rehearsed. "I'm the grandmother. I have rights." I froze. Every muscle in my body pulled taut like a wire. It wasn't loud, but I recognized the cadence immediately. That brittle entitlement wrapped in feigned concern. Mary. I stepped out into the hallway, and there she was, standing at the nurse's station, speaking to a fresh-faced staffer who didn't know the name Pierce should come with a biohazard warning. She had a scarf draped neatly over one shoulder, lipstick on, her hair sprayed into its usual perfect helmet. She looked like she was going to Sunday brunch, not trying to invade a hospital room she'd been explicitly banned from. "I'm only here to check on him," she was saying sweetly. "Lauren's under a lot of stress. I thought I'd help." The nurse looked uncertain. "Ma'am, the contact list says..." "Lauren's emotional," she cut in, like it was some secret she'd generously share. "She tends to overreact. I'm family. I should be allowed in." The audacity would have been laughable if it weren't so predictable. I didn't wait for the nurse to decide. I stepped forward, calm but firm. "She's not allowed here, it's written. Logged. Enforced." Mary turned like she hadn't known I was there. "Lauren," she said brightly. "I thought I'd drop in. You sounded overwhelmed." "You can leave now," I said. "Before security does it for you." She gave me that condescending smile, the one I'd seen at every school recital, every doctor's visit, every failed birthday she bothered to attend. "I came to see him, not you." "And he didn't ask for you," I snapped. "Neither did I." Behind me, Ethan's voice floated from the room. Weak, but clear. "Mom?" Mary's eyes lit up like she was about to win something. She stepped toward the door. I blocked her path. "You are not stepping foot in that room." A nurse picked up the phone behind us, probably calling a supervisor. Another watched nervously, holding a clipboard like a shield. Mary's tone dipped. "You're being dramatic. You think you're protecting him, but you're poisoning him. You're rewriting everything just because you're angry." "No," I said quietly. "I'm protecting him from people who show up with control instead of compassion." Then she did it, leaned in and hissed just loud enough for only me to hear. He won't stay soft forever. One day he'll realize you raised him weak. Just like you. And he'll resent you for it. Something cold uncoiled in my gut. I stepped closer, lowered my voice, and spoke slowly, with precision. The only thing he'll resent is the sound of your voice still echoing in his head. Which is why I'm making damn sure he never hears it again. The door behind me creaked open. Ethan. He was sitting upright, pale, confused. His IV line stretched awkwardly as he leaned out. "Who's that?" Mary straightened, instantly switching back to her performance. "Ethan, sweetheart." I cut her off. She was just leaving. His brows furrowed. He looked at her, then at me. He didn't smile. He didn't call her grandma. He said nothing. Just watched as I took her gently but firmly by the elbow and walked her 5 steps down the hallway. The staff didn't interfere. I let go at the elevator. "This is the last time," I said. "Next time you try to push your way in, I'll make sure the hospital files it as harassment. You don't get to show up when it's convenient for your ego." Her jaw tightened. "You'll regret cutting me out." "No, Mom," I said, finally meeting her eyes without flinching. "You cut yourself out years ago. I just made it official." She stepped into the elevator without another word. The doors slid shut, and I just stood there, staring at my own reflection in the metal. I didn't see the girl she used to manipulate. I saw a woman who had survived. Back in the room, Ethan looked at me with those big eyes, not frightened, just curious. "Who was that?" I sat on the edge of the bed and took his hand. "No one you need to worry about." He nodded like he understood more than I expected. Then he whispered, "Can you stay?" I smiled, and it wasn't broken or bitter. It was real. "There's nowhere else I'd rather be." That night, I sat by his bed again, watching the monitors tick along, listening to his soft breathing. And I realized, this wasn't just about cutting ties. It was about replacing them with people who choose love over power, comfort over control. And I was going to build that world for him. One uninvited visitor at a time. It started with a drawer I hadn't opened in years. Back home for the first time since Ethan's fall, the house felt alien. Too still. Too clean. Like it had held its breath while we were gone. I moved through it slowly, touching everything. The blanket he used for movie nights, the cereal box half full in the cabinet, the dirty sock behind the couch that had become a permanent fixture. Signs of life. Signs we were still here. But I needed to know how safe we were. And that meant going into the cabinet above the fridge, the one I avoided, because it always smelled like old dust and mistakes. The file was there, yellowed, thick, and full of everything my mother had ever co-signed or helped with. She always made sure I kept paper copies. For accountability, she'd say, as if I were the one prone to betrayal. I sat at the kitchen table and started reading. 37 pages in, I found it. A co-ownership agreement for the house, signed 10 years ago. Buried under a clause so vague you'd think it was nothing. All parties retain equal claim unless otherwise dissolved in writing. I froze. I had begged her for help with the down payment after the divorce. She agreed like it was an act of grace. I thought I'd paid her back. In full. 5 years ago. With interest. I had the receipts. But this? This was her trap. She still had a legal claim. A stake. I stared at the paper for a long time. My hands shook, but not from fear. From fury. Cold, clear fury. I remembered her smile the last time she visited the house, the way she looked at the stairs, the kitchen, Ethan's art on the fridge. She didn't see a home. She saw leverage, a place she still owned part of. A way in. Not anymore. That afternoon, I met with a real estate lawyer. Quietly. No emails. No paper trail she could sniff out. "I want her out," I said. "Legally. Permanently. Whatever it takes. The lawyer scanned the document and whistled. She knew what she was doing. Can we undo it? He nodded. You'd need to buy her out or sell your share to a third party. Clean the title. But it'll take some creative work. Good, I said. I'm done playing by her rules. For the next 4 weeks, while Ethan attended outpatient therapy and we slowly rebuilt our routine, I made moves. Quiet ones. Strategic ones. I opened a private account and shifted our assets. I found a third-party buyer, a trust I'd quietly created, and arranged for the house to be sold on paper, then leased back to me under new terms. Terms that named me as sole resident and tenant. It was complicated, expensive, and worth every dollar. When the transaction finalized, I sent one certified letter. It was brief. Mary Pierce, as of this date, you no longer hold any legal ownership or rights to the property located at 214 Elm Street. Access is revoked. All claims are void. Do not contact us again. 2 days later, she called. Blocked number. But I knew it was her. I answered. Just once. You ungrateful little bitch, she spat before I could say hello. You think this will stop me? I built that house with you. No, Mom, I said, my voice flat. You loaned me money, then tried to use it as a leash. That leash is gone now. You think you're safe? She hissed. You think you've won? I took a breath. Looked at the window. Ethan was in the backyard, his physical therapist tossing him a ball. He was laughing. I'm not playing to win anymore, I said. I'm playing to heal. Then I hung up and blocked her forever. The next week, the silence was blissful. No texts, no voicemails, no letters disguised as concerned family updates. Just me and Ethan, reclaiming our life. Meal by meal, therapy session by therapy session, Lego brick by Lego brick. I repainted the kitchen. New color, new start. I took down the family photo she once insisted hang in the hallway and replaced it with Ethan's art. We made our home ours. One evening, as I was tucking him in, he looked up at me and said, You're really good at protecting stuff, Mom. I smiled. I had to learn. He blinked slowly. Did Grandma try to take our house? I didn't lie. She thought she still owned part of it, but she doesn't now. Not anymore. Good, he said. Then, after a pause, I don't like how she talks to you. Me neither, baby. Me neither. He fell asleep quickly, his small hand curled around the stuffed tiger he'd clung to since the hospital. I sat there a while, just listening to him breathe. The next morning, I woke up to a new letter in the mailbox. No return address. I didn't need one to know who sent it. I didn't even open it. I walked to the fireplace, lit a match, and watched it burn. The ash curled like old promises. And when it was gone, I felt lighter. We were free now. But I knew her well enough to know she wouldn't let go quietly. Control doesn't leave without a fight. And when she came back, I'd be ready. 9 months passed. Enough time for wounds to scar, for routines to return, for a child to grow into a new kind of normal. Ethan was back in school, part-time, still limping a little, still needing help with stairs, but his smile was brighter. His sleep was deeper. And mine? Let's just say I didn't jump at shadows anymore. I slept through the night more often than not. The coffee tasted less bitter. The world had edges again, but they didn't feel like blades. I had created distance, legal, emotional, geographical. I'd blocked every number, changed my own twice. I moved our accounts. I even switched Ethan's pediatrician just to sever that last thread of shared paperwork. We were building something clean. So when the call came, it took me a minute to even recognize the name. Hi, this is Angela from Silver Pines Hospice, the woman said gently. Is this Lauren Pierce? I paused. Yes. You're listed as next of kin for Mary Pierce. She was admitted 3 days ago following a cerebral stroke. She's stable for now, but prognosis is guarded. I didn't say anything. The silence must have unnerved her because she rushed to fill it. She's asking for you. A long pause. Then, she's asking for Ethan too. There it was. I stared at the coffee mug in front of me, still full. My fingers curled tight around the ceramic, knuckles aching from how still I went. I'm sorry, the woman added. I realize this may come as a shock. She keeps saying you're her daughter, that she needs to speak with you. Her daughter. That word didn't belong in my mouth anymore, not when it came from hers. I stood slowly, moved to the sink, and poured the coffee down the drain. Ma'am? Angela's voice was soft again. Can I schedule a time for you to come in? You must have the wrong number, I said. My voice came out cold, smooth. Not cruel, just final. Sorry? There is no next of kin, I said. She has no family. Click. I set the phone down and stood there in the quiet, listening to the hum of the fridge and the creak of the heating system kicking on. Ethan was still asleep. The sun had just begun to hit the kitchen window, turning the counter gold. I didn't cry. I didn't smile either. There was just air. That afternoon, I sat at the edge of Ethan's bed while he built something with Lego bricks, some kind of ship with too many engines. He looked up once and said, You okay? Yeah, I replied. Just tired. He nodded, like that was enough. And it was. Because I'd already made my decision months ago. She'd made hers too, when she spat venom in a hospital hallway instead of asking if her grandson would live, when she tried to twist the law into a tool for control, when she stared down her only child and said, You always chose pain. She chose power. And now she could sit in it. Alone. I imagined her room at Silver Pines, beige walls, the smell of rubbing alcohol and fading roses, a shared bathroom, nurses half her age who didn't care about her pedigree. No family photos, no visitors, no one to fuss over her tea or adjust the blinds. Just her and her memories. Good. A week later, I got a letter. Handwritten. Shaky. From the hospice. Lauren, I don't expect forgiveness, but I expect acknowledgement. You're still my daughter. That's still my grandson. You're being childish. Come see me before it's too late. Mary. I didn't even finish reading it. I slid it into a manila envelope and dropped it off at the local legal center the next day with a note. Please inform Silver Pines that the patient known as Mary Pierce is not to contact Ethan Pierce in any capacity. Attached is documentation of revoked access. I am his sole guardian. If this continues, we will pursue formal legal restraint. I didn't hear back. No more letters, no more calls. I imagined her asking why. I imagined the nurse hesitating, then saying gently, Your daughter asked not to be contacted again. I imagined her face, that mixture of disbelief and rage she reserved for anyone who didn't obey. The way her lips thinned. The way she'd twist a tissue in her hands when she was fighting the urge to lash out. And then, I imagined her realizing this wasn't a fight she could win. Because silence? Silence is what I inherited from her. But unlike her, I know how to use it. One morning, I found Ethan in the backyard with sidewalk chalk. He was drawing big, colorful patterns across the concrete, suns and stars, and one stick figure with messy hair labeled Mom. I sat beside him, watched him fill the world with brightness. He didn't know she was in hospice. He didn't ask. And I didn't offer. Some endings don't need announcements. Just quiet. It started with a sympathy card. Soft pink, cheap cardstock, no return address. I opened it with that strange gut sense you get when something's wrapped in fake sweetness. Inside, cursive handwriting. Lauren, I saw your mother at Silver Pines. She's not the same. She talks about you and Ethan all the time. She asks for forgiveness. She cries. Maybe it's time. Cynthia R. Cynthia, an old friend of Mary's, church lady, holier than thou with a fondness for veiled insults and vintage brooches. She hadn't spoken to me since 2013, when I asked her not to tell my mother when Ethan got the flu. Back then, she said I was withholding love. Now, she wanted me to unlock the door again? I dropped the card in the trash without a second thought. 2 days later came another, this time from someone named Marla, then Geraldine, then someone I'd never even met, who claimed Mary had repented deeply and deserved one more conversation. It wasn't forgiveness they were pushing. It was guilt, polished and packaged. I didn't reply to any of them, but I saved every one, because something about it felt orchestrated, like she was reaching out through the only army she had left: old friends, pitying strangers, people who still believed in blood over boundaries. And then, like the universe was handing me a match, I found the recording. I'd forgotten it was even there. It was from the hospital. The voicemail she left the night Ethan woke up. The one I'd saved, half out of anger, half out of instinct. I listened to it again. Slowly, deliberately. You're making him soft. He'll be a burden if you keep coddling him. I'm not saying this to hurt you. I'm saying it because it's the truth. Boys need strength, not drama. He embarrassed everyone with that collapse. I won't let you turn him into a failure like you. I sat at the kitchen table, phone in hand, heartbeat steady. Then I emailed it. To the hospice, to her file, to her staff. Subject line: patient history, emotional abuse documentation. No note, just the audio. The file was clean, titled Mary Pierce, Akert Ethan, voicemail.m4a. 3 days later, Silver Pines called. A nurse I didn't know. We've updated Mary Pierce's care tier, she said cautiously, following the material you submitted. Meaning? She's no longer on our priority list. She's still receiving care, of course. Meals, meds, shared room, standard procedures. But the extra amenities she was previously granted have been removed. I let the silence stretch before I said, Understood. She hesitated. May I ask, why now? I thought about Ethan, the scar above his temple, the way his hand still shakes when he holds a pencil too long, the way he used to wake up in a sweat calling for me, not because of pain, but because he thought I'd left. I just needed time, I said. That weekend, another card arrived. From Marla again. She told us what you did. She said you're trying to punish her while she's dying. She said you want to erase her. I didn't respond. Because she wasn't entirely wrong. I didn't want revenge anymore. Not the screaming, cathartic kind. I wanted something colder. A truth that couldn't be twisted. A message she'd have to live inside. You are not entitled to the people you hurt. And now she was living in it. No private room, no holiday decorations, no bedside visitors with warm casseroles. Just the clink of cafeteria trays and the occasional shuffle of nurses doing rounds. No choice in music, no hand-picked shampoo, no quilt from home. I didn't stop there. I contacted the hospice director, anonymously, and offered to donate under a new fund initiative I'd read about through my charity work. A grant for vulnerable populations, single mothers, displaced children, low-income patients. I offered a sizable amount. With one condition: all funds are to benefit qualifying patients only. Exclusions apply to any current residents with the initials MP. It was legal, clean, and fully within donor rights. They accepted. I got a receipt, filed it away, then sat on the porch with Ethan and watched him draw with sidewalk chalk again. He was better at hands now, less shaky. His stick figures looked like superheroes. "Why do people call us sometimes and not leave their name?" he asked. "Because they don't have anything worth saying," I replied. He nodded. "Do you think people can change?" "Sometimes," I said. "But not everyone wants to." He thought about that for a while, then said, "I think you changed." "Yeah? Yeah. You used to be really tired all the time. Now you're just strong." That stuck with me, because he wasn't wrong. I wasn't tired anymore. I was done. The next morning, I got an envelope from the hospice, addressed to me in shaky handwriting. I didn't open it, just dropped it in the shredder and watched it turn to confetti. Not because I was angry, but because I didn't need her words anymore. I had his. And they were finally enough. Silver Pines wasn't on my radar until Ethan brought home a flyer from school. "Fundraising for local elder care," it said. "Our community matters." He asked if we could donate. I smiled. "Let me think about it." That night, while he slept, I sat at my laptop and searched Silver Pines financial reports. Nonprofit, struggling, reliant on private donors. Most of their quality of life care, private rooms, therapy animals, upgraded meals, holiday events, came from a single underfunded grant labeled Vulnerable Residents Enhancement Fund. It didn't take long to figure out how the hospice worked, how the extras got assigned, how certain patients got better pillows while others were stuck with paper-thin blankets. I kept reading, eyes skimming the grant language until one line stopped me cold. Priority allocation goes to residents without primary caregiver support, income, or external resources. My mother had all three, at least on paper. But she no longer had me, so I made a call. I didn't use my name. Instead, I used the foundation I helped build after Ethan's accident, Women Core Recovery Fund. We provided assistance to single mothers, trauma survivors, families recovering from abandonment. I never bragged about it. It wasn't for show. It was built from necessity. Now, it was the perfect channel. Women Corps would like to donate, I told the hospice administrator. We have a one-time grant, substantial, specifically earmarked for residents fitting these criteria. Single mothers, women over 65 without active family support, and low-income patients caring for children. The woman on the line sounded stunned. That would cover nearly 2/3 of our at-risk residents. One condition, I added. None of the funds may be allocated toward any patient with the initials MP. A pause. "I'm sorry?" "You heard me. It's non-negotiable." Another pause. Then a sigh. "We'll make a note of it in the system." The money transferred 3 days later. Enough to repaint the walls in 3 shared rooms. Enough to buy 10 new beds. Enough to bring in a part-time therapist. Enough for every ignored patient to suddenly matter again. Except one. Mary Pierce. Her room stayed the same. Drafty. 2 beds. 1 bathroom. No decorations. Her meals still arrived lukewarm. Her chart stopped receiving special notations. She noticed. I knew she did because a week later another letter arrived. "You always did like to perform, Lauren. Even your cruelty comes with an audience now. I know what you did. I'm surrounded by the help you give everyone else." That last line hit like a confession. She was seeing it. The gentle hands she never offered me now tending others. The warmth she once withheld now bathing every room but hers. She couldn't stand it. I didn't reply. But I did print that letter and tuck it into the back of a notebook labeled "Boundaries Are Love," because that's what this was. Not vengeance. Reallocation. I gave her nothing. Not hate. Not attention. Not even the dignity of argument. I gave everything to strangers who'd never hurt me, and it was the loudest message she'd ever receive. You get what you give. That weekend, Ethan and I went to the community center for a Women Corps event. He handed out cookies, beamed at the single moms and their toddlers, helped tape up paper hearts on the windows. He didn't know where the money came from, or where it had gone. He just knew it made people smile. Later that night, we sat on the porch with mugs of cocoa. He stared up at the stars, legs curled beneath him. "Why do some people act like they love you, but really just want to control stuff?" he asked. I didn't pretend to misunderstand. "Because love makes them feel weak," I said. "So they turn it into something else." "Did Grandma love you?" The question landed like a rock in my chest. "I think she loved the version of me she could shape," I said. "But not the real me, not the part that said no." Ethan nodded. "I'm glad you said no." I squeezed his hand. "Me too." Weeks passed. Silver Pines updated their donor wall. My name wasn't on it, just Women Corps. But I saw the photos in the newsletter. New paint, smiling residents, holiday decorations going up. I zoomed in on every image. Mary wasn't in a single one. She was still there, still listed as a resident, still taking up space. But now she was surrounded by proof that love could exist without her. That kindness bloomed in the very soil she once salted. That the daughter she tried to break had learned how to build. Not just walls, but entire homes, entire havens, for women who knew what it was to survive. And she got nothing. No warmth, no nameplate, no visit. Just the echo of everything she'd never become. The first snow came early that year. It painted the street in silence. Soft white mounds on roofs, mailboxes, branches. Even the power lines looked peaceful, like they'd finally exhaled. Ethan sat at the window, drawing snowflakes on the fogged glass with his finger. He smiled without knowing why, the kind of smile that belongs to children too young to carry the weight of history. I stood behind him with a mug of coffee, watching the flakes fall. And in the mailbox, untouched for 2 days, was a letter from Silver Pines. I hadn't opened it. I knew what it said. Mary Pierce was dead. There was no phone call, no email, just a standard envelope, cream-colored with the hospice logo printed in gray. I recognized the weight of it in my hand, not heavy, but not light either. Like it carried the final breath of someone who expected to outlive her own consequences. I didn't rush. I didn't cry. I didn't even bring it inside. I slid it across the mantel above the fireplace and left it there. A sealed ghost, waiting to be claimed. "Do I still have a grandma?" Ethan asked, breaking the quiet. I sat beside him. "What made you think of that?" He shrugged. "I saw the picture of her in the closet when I was getting my winter boots." I blinked. The photo. Forgotten. Tucked into a shoebox from another life. Ethan at 3. Me in my nurse's scrubs. Mary standing behind us like a statue. The smile never reached her eyes. "You don't," I said softly. "Not anymore." He didn't ask why. Just nodded. Like he already knew. And that was when I realized something. The worst of her hadn't touched him. The legacy she tried to plant. Control, shame, coldness. It hadn't taken root in him. I'd pulled it out before it could sprout. Every hour I spent teaching him gentleness, listening instead of yelling, staying when she would have walked away. It worked. He was free. The next morning, I lit a fire. It was early. Ethan was still asleep. The snow outside had thickened overnight. The world looked padded in white noise, like even the birds didn't want to disturb the peace. I picked up the envelope, held it for a moment. It didn't feel like closure. It felt like finality. I slid it into the flames and watched it curl. The edges blackened. The paper buckled. The waxy logo blistered before it melted into nothing. Ash floated upward, slow and soft, like memories that didn't belong to me anymore. That day, we made cinnamon rolls. We built a fort in the living room out of every blanket we owned. We played Monopoly until Ethan cheated just to make the game end. He laughed until he coughed, and I wrapped him in 2 comforters, pretending he was a burrito. We didn't talk about her again. I got one more piece of mail that week, from a lawyer. Estate matters, probate forms, a funeral invitation on embossed stationery RSVP requested. It sat on the counter for 2 days. Then I slid it into the trash. I didn't need a room full of strangers whispering about her regrets. I didn't need to see old women in pearls weeping for a version of her that never existed. I didn't need to hear someone eulogize her as a woman of strength. Strength doesn't look like silence when your grandson is in a coma. It doesn't sound like a voicemail telling his mother he's weak. It doesn't feel like cold paper that says she still owns part of the home you bled for. Strength is staying, loving through the fear, protecting what matters even when you're exhausted. And by those standards, Mary Pierce had never been strong a day in her life. The day of the funeral, Ethan and I went sledding. We bundled up in old scarves and knit hats and dragged a cracked red sled up and down the neighborhood hill. He fell twice and laughed both times. I joined him the third. At the bottom of the slope, red-cheeked and breathless, he looked up and said, "Can we always live here?" I didn't hesitate. "Forever, if you want." He smiled. "Good. I like it when it snows." That night I found the shoebox, the one with the photo. I held it for a long time. Then I opened the lid, pulled out the picture, and flipped it over. No writing. No date. Just silence. I fed it to the fireplace, not out of hate, out of completion. Not everything broken has to be glued back together. Some things can stay shattered, as proof you survived the impact. And the photo? That wasn't us anymore. This, Ethan in his footy pajamas, cocoa on the stove, snow still dusting the windows. This was us. Whole, untouched, chosen. It came 2 weeks after the snow melted. Spring had started nudging its way back into the world, bare trees twitching with the first hint of green, sidewalks drying into dusty gray, birds testing their voices again. I was folding laundry when the phone rang. Unknown number. Out-of-state area code. I nearly didn't answer. I don't answer strangers anymore, but something in me, old habit, maybe, flicked the screen. "Lauren Pierce?" "Yes." "This is Resting Pines Memorial Services. We're handling the arrangements for Mary Pierce. You were listed as next of kin. We're finalizing the details of her plaque." I stayed quiet. Waited. "We just need confirmation on the inscription and to know who will be covering the cost. It's a basic bronze marker unless otherwise requested." I almost laughed. The way grief industries always speak in soft, neutral tones, like death is just another line item waiting for a credit card. I cleared my throat. "You have the wrong number," I said. A pause. Confusion. "But you're Lauren Pierce, correct?" "Yes, but I'm not the person responsible." "She listed you legally." "She also listed herself as the kind of person who deserved to be remembered." Silence. Then I said it. Calm. Final. She chose silence. Let her stay there. I hung up. Stood there for a second, laundry forgotten, listening to the soft hum of Ethan's voice upstairs. He was on a video call with a friend, laughing about some game update, his feet thumping against the hardwood floor in excitement. The sound of a life untouched by her. I moved to the mantel. Taped to the wall above it was a new photo, one I took last week. Ethan standing in front of the school science fair display we'd built together. His project was a solar-powered car. Won third place. He didn't care that it wasn't first. He cared that I was there, that I'd stayed the whole night, that I'd clapped the loudest. Beneath the photo was a small label Ethan had written in Sharpie. Be kind, or be forgotten. I hadn't told him to write it. I didn't ask what it meant. But it said everything. That afternoon, we baked lemon cookies. It was something Mary used to make, except hers were bitter and dry and always accompanied by some offhand insult about my weight or my parenting or how tired I looked. Ours were better. Ethan added extra zest. I let him lick the bowl. He looked up at me between bites. Did someone call earlier? I nodded. Someone from where Grandma's buried. He didn't flinch. What did they want? To know if I'd pay for her plaque. Are you? No, I said. She chose a version of me that doesn't exist anymore. He nodded, took another bite. I don't want a plaque when I die. I blinked. No? I want a tree, he said. So something good keeps growing. I kissed the top of his head. Then that's what you'll get. We spent the rest of the day outside, planting tiny basil seeds in the garden, fixing the wind chime by the front porch, picking up sticks from the last storm, rebuilding, always rebuilding, from whatever came before. Mary Pierce was dead. No funeral, no flowers, no plaque, just a single unreturned call to a daughter who had stopped answering years ago. And that was her ending. No rewrite, no redemption arc. Just the consequence of a life spent confusing power for love. Ethan went to bed early, worn out from the sun. He fell asleep mid-sentence, a book flopped over his chest. I pulled the blanket over him and turned out the light. Then I walked into the living room and sat in the quiet. No ghosts, no guilt, just me, alone, but never lonely. I picked up a pen and started a new page in my journal, the one I used to write in when I thought healing had to be loud. Now I knew better. Healing doesn't always roar. Sometimes it just closes the book and starts over. On the page, I wrote, "Some people are born to be remembered. Some people are remembered for who they chose to be. And some people disappear the moment you stop needing their approval." LP. Outside, wind chimes tapped gently against the siding. In the garden, the basil seeds slept. And upstairs, my son dreamed without her shadow. That, to me, was the loudest victory. Not revenge, reclamation.